So, I titled this sermon, What is Yours Like? What you do tells the world who you are. So we've all heard that old saying that a picture is worth 1,000 words. Your character is what defines you to others, and that's the pictures that they see. So I'm going to start off by showing a couple of pictures here, just to get an idea of what I was talking about here. A couple of pictures of my niece doing goofy things, and kids from church. That's a really good one. It's my favorite. My kids again, and then just various other pictures. If I let you sit here and look at them long enough, you'll come to conclusions, I'm sure. This one says, if you repeat a lie often enough, it becomes the truth. And then truth is crossed out and it says politics. This is probably my other favorite one here. I know there's some cat people in the room that probably enjoy this. This one's pretty awesome. If you can't see it, it's some hedgehogs and they're surrounding an old whisk broom brush type of thing, and the caption says "Mom?" question mark. Here's one for the older audience. And obviously, you know, like I said, they all say something. Obviously, this is saying that he's kind of scared about whatever it is that's trying to eat him. So I show you these, you know, because that's what people see when they look at you. Your character, the things that you do, is what tells them who you are. And they start drawing questions like, who are you? Or, who are you? What kind of person have you been? What kind of person are you trying to be? What do people see when they look at you? Do they see a strong person or a person with integrity? Do they see an honest, respectful person, or do they see a brat or a lazy person or a whiner? These are just a few of the questions that people ask themselves when they look at you. Your character is what leads people to these answers. Character is the moral and ethical features and traits that form the individual nature of a person. So why is it important? Why should you care what people think about you? My family likes to play this game called Headbands. It's a pretty fun game where everybody sits around and they sit around a table and there's a deck of cards face down. Person a question about their card. And if, like I would say, is mine alive? And the person I asked would say yes or no. And then I could ask, is mine edible? And that person could say yes or no, based on what is the picture that's on my card. So we go around like that, and if I guess it, then I get to keep going. If not, time runs out and the next player goes. And your character is a lot like that. You might not be able to see what's going on. You might not be able to see your character all the time. Just like in the game, you can't see your card. But everyone else can. So today I want to talk about character and why it's important. Your character is important because it's tested. During times of testing, your character is shown, either for the good or for the bad. However, I like to call these times of testing growth opportunities. But during these times, your character will be revealed to others. Paul says in Romans 5:3-4 that character is made to endure and leads to hope. The Greek word for endurance here is hypomeno, and is translated as certain times to be awaited or patient. The way we respond to situations in our life is what builds our character. Let's look at a couple of people from the Bible who turned out to have and endure through some growth opportunities.
David, before he was king, he had to endure being hunted and on the run from Saul, who had been the anointed king. God had established Saul as king and anointed him. So David feared him and refused to kill him later on when he had the opportunity when he was on the run, because he recognized God's anointing. Now, the reason why David was on the run was because Saul had messed up at some point, and his anointing had then transferred to David. God gave the anointing to David and said that he would be the next king. There were multiple times when David was on the run that he had the opportunity to actually kill Saul, and he chose not to because of that anointing. And he even rebuked his own men for having said that they should do that. And then sometime later, in 1 Samuel 31, 1-6, toward the end of Saul being on the run, or David being on the run, Saul and his 3 sons are killed in battle, and that makes way for David to become king and to take the throne. So out of that came some blessing. Even though he had to endure some hardship, he still ended up having some blessings.
Job is another person that we can look at. He endured the loss of everything he had, from his family, health, and wealth. There was something inside that there was a matter of integrity there. He feared God.
And these are character traits that are byproducts of enduring patiently. In verses 2-6, we can see that it took him some time to get to where he is based off of what he'd accumulated to this point in his life. He had 10 children, and at least 7 of them were old enough to live on their own, in their own houses. It's seen in verse 4, where his sons would have a feast or a party and invite the sisters over, and they would all just hang out and eat and do all kinds of stuff that Job eventually had to go atone for, just in case they had messed up. So he'd been through a lot, and it's also clear that he had amassed a lot of the defining characteristics of wealth for a person of that time. He had thousands of cattle and donkey and whatever else there was, servants. He'd endured a lot to get his character, and his character was such that God himself used Job as an example when he was talking to Satan. And he said, and God allowed Satan to do his worst to test Job's character. However, because of his character and the fear of the Lord, Job remained strong and was blessed and rewarded by God with far more than he had in the beginning. And that can be seen in chapter 42, verses 1-17. So there will be times in our lives that we'll have to endure some things. And I'm actually going through one of those times now with the death of my mom. And I can tell you from experience that my character has been tested, watched, commented on, and tremendously developed. So having your character tested is not a bad thing. Also, God can use anyone's character. You should know that God will use you as you are. But if he does, you'll never be the same again. Jesus' disciples were a good example of that. They were looked upon as some of the worst people in society at the time. In God's Word translation, Mark 2:16, they were called tax collectors and sinners. Let's look at the Apostle Paul, or Saul as it were. Before his conversion, he was a really bad guy. Stephen, who was the first martyr, was stoned to death by a group of people, while Saul held their coats and cheered them on. On another occasion, Saul himself wanted to kill the people that believed in Jesus Christ. It says in Acts 9:1-2 that meanwhile Saul was uttering threats with every breath and was eager to kill the Lord's followers. So he went to the high priest. He requested letters addressing the synagogues in Damascus, asking for for their cooperation in the arrest of any followers of the way he found there. He wanted to bring them, both men and women, back to Jerusalem in chains. And Ananias, a disciple who lived in Damascus, had heard of Saul's reputation and was afraid when the Lord told him to take care of Paul when he got there. Paul is a great example of how God can change the worst characteristics in a person for the good and use them for his glory. It's also important to note that God didn't just use people from the Bible in that era. Here's the name of a really, really bad guy that some of you might have heard of. His name's Jeffrey Dahmer. And this is the story that I pulled off the internet. Jeffrey Dahmer is one of America's most well-known serial killers. Between 1978 and 1991, he is known to have killed 17 men and boys. His murders were particularly gruesome, involving rape, torture, and cannibalism. I'll spare you any more detail than that. Dahmer was finally arrested in 1991 while serving time at Wisconsin's Columbia Correctional Institution. Jeffrey declared himself a born-again Christian after reading some evangelical literature his father had sent him. He asked Minister Roy Ratcliffe to come to the prison and baptize him. Ratcliffe has said of Dahmer, "One of the most common questions put to me about Jeff has to do with the sincerity of his faith, and I usually hear this from Christians. They ask if Jeff was truly sincere in his desire for baptism and in his Christian life. My answer is always the same. Yes, I am convinced he was sincere." After his baptism, Jeffrey Dahmer continued to meet and study with Ratcliffe. He was beaten and killed November 28, 1994 by a fellow inmate. So clearly, God doesn't care about who you are. He's more interested in who you're going to become. And my last point here is your character should reflect that of Jesus. We have been called to conform to the image of Christ. In Romans 8:29, he was born into this world which made him human. And God claiming him as his own, along with the Immaculate Conception, made him fully God. Since God is love and Jesus is God in human form, then Jesus is love and contains the characteristics of love as talked about in 1 Corinthians 13, 1 through 8. And that says, "If I speak in the tongues of mortals and of angels but do not have love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have faith so as to remove mountains, but I do not have love, I am nothing. If I give away all my possessions, and if I hand over my body so that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient, love is kind, love is not envious, or boastful, or arrogant, or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends, but as for prophecies, they will come to an end." So Jesus embodied all of those characteristics of love as seen from 1 through 8. He was also anointed. Acts 10:37 through 38 says that the message that was spread by John the Baptist after Jesus' baptism was that God had anointed him. And likewise, Jesus was a servant, which according to the handbook to Bible study by Paul S. Carling, he displayed the characteristics of humility and selflessness, or self-denial. There's another game that my family likes to play called What's Yours Like, where a guessword card is placed into a concealer and passed around the table to all the players except the person in the hot seat. That person is basically it for the round. When the timer is started, the person in the hot seat then asks each player a question. What is yours like? The players that are not in the hot seat must answer honestly. So basically there's a card, it's put into a little cover that opens